everybody is seated. So I actually want to begin with a sentence praising the first panel, I think, which provided a really good high-level overview of what are the key topics to be discussed. But now we are indeed going into more detail, and we'll be discussing the market design and how market design is facilitating or perhaps hampering the development of renewables. I hope it's facilitating, though, but we'll figure out. And we'll also speak about the relevance of infrastructure for how the market participants actually plan their investment, how do they look at the market, how do they plan and develop their business models, do they need to adapt their business models depending on the changes on the market. So, and of course, the consumption side of it, we will be speaking about the flexibility on the demand side, so demand flexibility and probably also other auxiliary services which come handy when we speak about balancing the energy system as such. And we also, of course, will talk about the, curtailment. Is curtailment of renewables something that is on the agenda, or is it not? And what sort of factors can influence whether the TSO needs to or wants to curtail some sort of capacities? So there's plenty actually on the dish, but let me give, first of all, let me give floor to each of the participants to very briefly introduce themselves and state one or two, or perhaps three, but not more than three, really key messages that you think are relevant for today's discussion. So let's start from the far end. Gati, go ahead.
Yeah, I will start by mentioning two aspects why I think wind is increasingly relevant today. First is war in Ukraine, and Iran has opened up again a debate on security of supply, and in Latvia, in Baltic region and Europe, it's important that we secure our supplies, become more independent, and that we isolate ourselves from this gas price volatility. Therefore, wind is a viable, realistic, and optimal technology to be part of solution. And second is, especially during last winter, we could observe growing demand. We saw new demand records in many countries in Europe, which again highlighted that additional sources are necessary, and wind energy particularly would be a very optimal addition to the wind generation portfolio.
Thank you. Ignas, your perspective.
Labdien, Riga. My name is Ignas. I'm head of Renewable Energy Center. We established our team some 3 or 4 years ago with an express focus on facilitating renewables in Lithuania, in the region. And we're having quite a moment. Currently, as was mentioned before, Lithuania just last week reached 6 gigawatts of installed solar and wind. 6 gigawatts for a small country like ours. We're expecting to have more than 10 terawatt hours of energy produced this year by solar and wind alone. Relative to the unit of demand, I believe this puts Lithuania at the top in Europe. And with that, as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. So our main focus going forward is making the next stage successful. So currently, up until now, everything was about catching up to the demand. Now we have the supply. Now we need to make sure that we use it efficiently. And with that, the focus is on flexibility, on interconnectivity, on providing any and all possible measures of flexibility for our developers so that Lithuania and the region itself becomes attractive region for investments, for attracting big energy consumers, and so that we turn this power generation into value creation.
Yeah,
That
don't
would be-
steal the show. Don't steal the show. Let some remain for the discussion parts. Okay, Ignas, I think quite clear message here. We just have to figure out what to do with that extra capacity when there is plenty of capacity, but we'll figure it out during our discussion. Okay, Viktoriya, go ahead.
So, from my perspective, my daily job is to make sure that politicians understand what is the value of wind energy to society and to their countries, and to help you also do your business. From this panel, what I would like you to remember from me, hopefully, would be that indeed wind energy is today 20% of Europe's electricity demand. It will grow to 50% by 2050. We really need to work on a renewables-based system in the long term, not because it is like a wishy, something that we need to wish for, but because it makes economic sense. And it makes economic sense not only at the 2050 horizon, but it makes economic sense already today. So this is where we need to put our focus, and I would also like to explain to you the big changes that would be happening in European legislation, and that will have a very clear impact on the way that we are planning for our grids with more renewables going forward.
So EU-wide eyes on the regional market and beyond. All right, thank you. Deniss.
Good afternoon. Representing Schneider Electric company who positioned ourselves as advanced energy technology leader. So our main goal is to electrify, digitize, and automate all businesses, industry, and also homes. So from today's discussion, we definitely see that the Baltic countries reached the point where we are not limited anymore, our, let's say, renewable ambition, not limited anymore by the generation capacity. But the limitation comes from how our market, how our consumption, and how we'll be able to adapt. So from the renewable ambition to the new market reality. Talking about a bit of curtailment itself, so it's not a problem of renewal itself. It's a question of the system flexibility. And definitely we see that by addressing this properly will help us to unlock the full potential of renewables and to be able to scale up the wind and in general the renewables further grow while maintaining the stability, what also Gatis mentioned in today's geopolitical environment, stability and keeping the resilience and of course the efficiency.
Thank you. And last but not least, Dmitrijs, your perspective.
Thank you. Dmitrijs from Vindr, Latvia. So as a renewable energy developer, we are a business. And in any business, in order to make your business to be successful, you need clients. And our clients are the consumers. So I would like to actually focus on the consumption side of the grid. I mean, the system, the grid is a two-edged sword. It's always the production and consumption. And I think it's time for us to start talking about how we can enable new consumption, not just make the existing larger, but enable a new and flexible consumption. I think it's time also to talk about how the existing or new grid tariffs could motivate that. And in my opinion, as the desynchronization project is over, it's time to set a new and a bigger strategic goal for the whole three Baltic countries. And in our opinion, that kind of goal would be a single Baltic price zone. I know it's a bold statement, but I think we could do that.
Well, I didn't really expect this coming then, but when again, I mean, when if not now? So yeah, it used to be a non-topic for a while. Well, first it used to be a topic, then a non-topic, and now it's coming back on the agenda as well again. So, and this has also been raised and discussed at ACER, which is European Agency for Energy Regulators Cooperation. So it's yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah, I think it's a good point you're making. Right, thank you for these introductory words. I'll kick off with one question to Gatis. You actually mentioned already that there is potential for wind power, but could you just detail a few more factors which could actually put wind in the game, or in Latvia's case, back in the game, because we've had so little wind development, except for very recently. For 15, 20 years, we had almost nothing going on. So is it market that has changed, or is it really the physical necessity for more energy? And again, does wind has a potential as a standalone, or is it part of hybrid solutions? I know it's plenty. You can answer in shorter bits, and then we can interact.
Fundamentally, we can look at the power balance in the Baltic region and installed capacities. Past years have been record-breaking in terms of renewable generation addition. Last year, Baltic region achieved 16 gigawatts of installed generation capacity, unprecedented. Last year, wind and solar generation became the largest source of installed generation in the Baltics, now representing 55% of total generation. But despite this rapid development, Baltic region is still on average importing 1/3 of necessary electricity. And Baltic states have ambition to achieve self-sufficiency by 2030. In addition to that, if we look at the thermal generation, which used to be 7-8 years ago a dominating source of electricity in the Baltic region, fossil-fueled thermal generation, is also decreasing. Now it's reached record lowest level, last year producing only 25% of total generation. And also thermal generation capacity usage rates 10 years ago was in Baltic region on average 26%. Last year already 13% on average, which is again a record lowest level ever in the Baltic region. And big part of this thermal generation is old and will be decommissioned during next decade. And there needs to be a viable replacement solution, and wind seems to be one of the optimal solutions for that.
Yeah, it sounds actually quite good, at least in theory. Well, in practice, it means we have to have grids in place, because the capacities that will be replacing those thermal capacities that we have to phase out inevitably, they will be most likely distributed type of generation. It's not going to be centralized as in the old days, and this is where you have to be able to digitalize the grid and be able to connect new generation sources to the grid and ensure flexibility. And this is where I go to Dmitrijs. You spoke of flexibility. Of course, you have to have flexibility both on the supply and also on the demand side. Is there a balance? I mean, there always has to be balance in the system, but where do you see the biggest potential and probably the biggest risks, or as you see from your perspective?
So I think in the past years, we have talked a lot about flexibility of generation. I mean, we have talked about that wind power plants must be able to ramp down if it's needed. We have talked about ability of inverters to help grid, and I think it's time also to turn to the other side and see how our consumption can be flexible. But not only flexible in terms of short-term flexibility, which we always kind of talked about, flexibility against the grid. It was also always this short-term flexibility. But I think the consumption, it has ability to be flexible in the long term. So the generation patterns today, as we see that we have a system with the 2 generation seasons, a cold season when base load is very, very important, and the warm season, so spring, summer, and autumn, when solar generation is so dominant that we have negative prices. So we have to look on how we can enable seasonal consumption. I think that the district heating is one of the key points here. It's time to make grid connections for district heating and grid tariffs much more friendlier than they are. The other way is to look on other seasonal consumers, which are now today in the fossil world. Look at the agriculture. In Latvia alone, after very conservative estimates, we use about ½ terawatt-hour of heating energy just to dry grain. And this all could have been electrified, because this happens in July, August, September. Perfect consumer, but it's not being done because the grid tariffs are not flexible, right?
Yeah, different businesses, different needs, and different solutions. That's your message, basically, that also from the regulatory point of view, there has to be more flexibility. Do I read you correctly?
And I really hope that the system operators will be more proactive into approaching this, because let's be honest, until now, the system operators make their grid tariffs looking back and not forward, and the regulator is very reactive, just saying yes or no to the submitted grid tariff.
You want more dynamic into that, okay.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Flexibility in thinking and in the approach. Okay.
And in the grid tariffs.
All right, grid tariffs as well. Yeah, I cannot comment as a representative of the regulator right now. That is a disclaimer. The privilege of being the moderator. Right, back to Ignas. So on the far end from me, Ignas. There's 9 gigawatts of projects in the pipeline in Lithuania. Doesn't that sound like there's going to be oversaturation in the market? And what do you do with all that capacity if that comes to fruition one day? I mean, the grid is just going to, I don't know, collapse, or is it going to be flexible connections which the TSO can switch off at any given moment? And I mean, there's plenty of challenges accommodating such a capacity. I know there is something in mind for Lithuania in this respect, stretching the project's time.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So actually, there are quite a lot of things in mind to address these and broader questions. The first thing to understand, yes, Lithuania has roughly 9 gigawatts of projects in the pipeline. I have a faith in the sanity of market, that the growth of generation will be closely tied to the growth in the demand. And let's assume a hypothetical situation. If the demand does not change in Lithuania, then I'm willing to bet we will not have 9 extra gigawatts of renewables, because the market does not require that. On the other hand, if we are successful in attracting electrification to our region, if we are successful in attracting additional consumers to our region, what those 9 gigawatt means is that we as operator already pre-approved that the grid can support that. So as long as there will be an offtake, we are already analyzed and already given our stamp that this is safe to do. And current grid with the planned infrastructure improvements over the next couple of years are sufficient to accommodate that. To add to that, also what you mentioned as well, it is one of our focus, as I briefly mentioned previously, we are entering a new stage. We are no longer trying to achieve as fast growth as possible on the generation side. Now we're looking more into balanced growth, into mature growth. And there are quite a lot of instruments planned this year for the developers, for the market participants. And one of the mechanisms that we are putting in place is allowing, I would call, extreme flexibility for the developer to choose the time frame of when to actually implement the projects, with the express idea that we would allow our developers to look into the market needs, to see how the interconnectors are doing, to see how the consumption side is doing, and place all the projects not all at the same time, but have like a 10-year period where we have a constant inflow of new projects.
Yeah, but I have a question here. All right. I mean, those developers who have projects in mind and who want to implement something and build new capacity, basically they say, well, this is our business model. It is a business model built on current assumptions today as we speak, right? So from the point of view of regulatory framework, stretching out the timeline for the implementation of these projects means that we have to postpone, we have to reserve the money in the future somewhere. I mean, not all companies and not all developers have equity at hand. I mean, you have to go into the debt at some point, at least partially. So is it about guaranteeing something? No?
Well, I would actually want to correct you on one thing.
Okay.
I would say that projects are not built on the current assumptions. They are built on the assumptions several years ago when the projects were initiated. And we have
so it's even worse.
So we have to be honest about the fact that the market situation is rapidly changing. And that's how we see our role in this. We cannot make sure that each project succeeds, but we can make sure that we provide all the tools to the developers to make informed decision, to choose the timeline that they see best possible for them. And one additional moment, not only we are planning to allow flexibility in timeline, we are also planning to allow flexibility in choosing the type of projects they're developing. Meaning if a developer sees that current market situation is more favorable for the consumption side, we will be allowing to use this commitment to us to build out the projects and to actually build not necessarily the generation side projects, but consumption side projects as well. So that's how we see our role, to provide maximum flexibility for the developer to make a decision that makes sense, makes business sense.
So basically, it means that the developers have to be extremely flexible in their approach as well. They have to adapt like instantly, like things could change tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and they have to be able to adapt their business model and assumption. I mean, there are things changing now. For example, the batteries, and I'll probably go with my next question to Deniss. Batteries, the main business model behind batteries was going into was qualifying the assets for balancing market and going into the balancing market because the prices were lucrative. Prices were pushed down by the end of last year and beginning of this year. So batteries are what they are changing the market segments where they participate. Deniss, do you see the changes in the business model?
Absolutely. So you mentioned it absolutely right. So that yesterday and today, let's say, batteries and storage systems mainly considered as for the balancing, and today and tomorrow, the best becoming, let's say, multi-purpose assets. They need to be considered not as alone, aside, or approached through their storage only, but they should be considered as part of the system in parallel with the demand, flexible demand, and of course, potentially with the export option. For sure that the battery open up various type of the topic, like from one side is how to open up the demand flexibility, and at the same time also might help the TCOs, as an example, from the technical point of view, like for the voltage support and so on. So the battery itself, unless it's digitally integrated, might bring completely different value out of it, for sure. And a bit, like complementing a bit to Dmitrijs and Ignas on the previous questions, talking about this flexibility, talking about this the number of projects and how we are prepared for that. So maybe a few remarks. So one important thing is that today we obviously see that the grids, they need not become bigger, but they need to become smarter, for sure. Yep. So here we speak about the digital aspect of it. We speak about more connection point. And here I speak about better forecasting. We have forecasting, but we need to go for the better forecasting. We need to speak about real-time monitoring, yeah? And especially to activate the potential demand coming from the industrial loads, coming from the buildings, from the EVs, from the storage itself, what you ask. And when it comes to the projects, the number of the projects, so it's again, you open a bit of this question of curtailment and where we potentially might face it. So it's a question of the readiness of the system, of the flexibility of the system. Can we adapt of it? Ignas mentioned, so it's that potentially we should be ready. But this is the kind of a stress test of let's say, of our system flexibility to it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, very valid points indeed. And when we speak about batteries, I mean, there was a big hype about batteries a few years ago. It's slightly probably decreased because the business case has changed. And if we speak about installing plenty of extra renewable capacities, it means there's no way how any amount of batteries can be installed to actually be able to take in all this extra energy, which means we have to have grids in place which will make us able to export to other markets physically, to other geographies. And this is where I know you could add something, but I want to switch over. I want to give the floor to Viktoriya. EU is definitely, as you noted during the first panel already, is paying more and more attention to the importance of physical grids, right? Do you see that Europe is currently, and from the regulatory point of view, and also from the policy point of view, up to its task to actually, I don't know, either follow the market requirement, I mean, what the market wants, or set the rules for what the market has to want?
What the market has to want. Maybe let me zoom out 1 second and then I'll answer that question.
Go ahead.
When you sit in Brussels and you see things from a very binary perspective, in the sense that we have had a lot of legislation in the last 10 years, which was focusing mainly on the supply side of things, as we were also mentioning in the previous panels. So we've done great things about more renewable energy generation and so on and so forth. But the two things that have been lacking for the last decade, the low-hanging fruits of the Green Deal and now the Clean Industrial Deal that we try to achieve in Europe, have been, on the one side, what do we do about the demand? Are there actually consumers that would want to pick up all of that electricity that we are procuring? And second of all, how are we going to get the renewable electricity to the people through the transmission grids? And this is the reason why, from a security perspective, and considering what happened in 2022 and what is happening now again with Iran, there is very clear thinking at European level that there is no way out. And this is the prerogative that we're going to focus on, about electrifying the European economy with renewables and making sure that this is what brings a competitive advantage in a global race for renewable energy investments. We, as WindEurope, have always tried to also showcase the benefit with concrete numbers. And for many years, of course, we have been all known that renewable electricity is the most competitive form of new power generation. But is it still the case when you add the grid necessary for integrating these renewables? Is it still the case when you add the costs for the backup and the storage? And the answer is yes, because we calculated it last year, and we can most definitely say that even with all these additional costs, renewables-based electrification is still the best choice that we can all have. Now, in the European Union, what we're going to work on, and what is the kind of steer that is coming from Brussels and will be discussed at national level, but also with the TSOs, it's two things. One is about making sure that especially the industrial users are the ones who would be able to have the necessary incentives to electrify with more renewables. This is what we call the so-called Clean Industrial Deal that we have put forward on the table, and this is really the low-hanging fruit of how we can have more demand for renewables. But the second thing is this big grids package that is now currently under negotiation in between the member states and also the European Parliament, which also is making us think a little bit from a European perspective, and in particular is proposing to move away from national planning on the grids to a more European planning on the grids.
So more role to NSOE, for example?
More role to the European Commission, first of all, so that we can have like a coherent view of where we need to go with the European energy system, but of course in full consultation and discussion with the relevant national TSOs. The idea here is really that we are all on the same page where we need to take the European energy system by 2050 in particular, and that we are able to plan it ahead with more renewables on the line. This is the big thing.
Yeah. I wonder, Dmitrijs.
Yeah, I would like actually to comment that, because it sounds to me like, yeah, we are looking from this pan-European perspective and we need this over-national, let's say, planning, but we don't need to go far. We already have RCCs in place in Europe. I mean, why not start using them more actively? Give them more, let's say, power. Give them more ability to plan at least on a regional level. And when you have done that, then go on to maybe pan-European level, because it's easy to talk about these big goals, but start with something little. And I think RCCs actually could be a great instrument.
Translate for those who don't understand, who don't know.
Regional coordination centers, which are in place in whole Europe. I think it's a perfect tool to start really coordinating in between TSOs, at least on a regional level, and not just exchange information as they do today.
There was actually, if I may jump in with a question from the audience, there was a question from an anonymous source. Is this reasonable to talk about unified pricing system in Baltics if there are several energy flow bottlenecks related to balancing needs between countries? In a way, it's related. I mean, the RCCs are the ones which also deal with the methodology and with the calculating cross-border flows, right, Gati? But I think there is a good development that we can announce in public in the Baltic states recently. Could you just briefly elaborate on that?
Yeah, I would say that from transmission grid operators' side, there are two solutions for the flexibility and for the market depths that we are dealing. One is interconnection development. Today, Baltic external interconnectors towards European market represent 60% of average Baltic system demand. So we are already one of the best interconnected markets in Europe. And in next 5 years, Baltic external interconnection capacity will increase to 80% of Baltic system demand. So this is one of the solutions, and also
20% increase, that is.
Yes, and that also work on internal interconnections is ongoing that will facilitate to approach us closer to this one single price idea. And the second solution is markets. We all understand that flexibility is needed, both in consumption and generation side. It's important that these are market-based solutions, and it all starts with price signals, because if the price signal is right, then there will be movement. And what transmission grid operators have been doing during past years, we have implemented more short-term markets. We have added additional intraday auctions. We have increased trading resolution to 15 minutes. We have a shortened time period to 30 minutes before delivery that market players can trade. So there is already available market infrastructure that wind generation and other volatile generation can use to reduce balancing costs. And also this is a place where consumers and producers can meet when flexibility is needed. Such consumers like district heating boilers that are now developing quite rapidly in the Baltic region and in Riga as well.
Yeah, this is an interesting point actually about the electrification of different business sectors, including in the energy industry itself. And Dmitry, I think you mentioned flexibility of tariffs. There's more need on the regulatory side of. There's a question actually from the audience: are wind producers ready to pay higher tariff to enable more affordable tariff for district heating consumption, for example, boilers? What do you say on that?
I mean, it's a provocative question, first of all, because producers do not pay tariffs in the same manner as consumers do. For those who ask online, I would clarify. As a producer, you pay a fixed fee every month. Either you are connected to the distribution system or transmission system, so you just pay a fixed fee, and that's it regarding your installed capacity. So I don't really regard this question as a question. I will just comment on it.
Okay, but the comment is good enough. I mean, yeah, you have to clarify it.
But back to the flexibility of the grid tariffs. I mean, for any consumer, an energy price is only a part of the equation. The second part of the big part of the equation is the grid tariff you pay. So when everybody boasts about negative prices that actually you get paid to use electricity, that's not completely true, because even though price is -€5, you still have 40 euros as a DSO tariff on top of that. So it's never free. I think it's time to look on how the tariffs could mirror the flexibility in the grid. So let's say even that when the prices are negative, why not also make a grid tariff 50% smaller at those hours? For example, just to motivate consumers to shift their loads, especially to those hours with negative prices.
But Deniss, it means, I mean, flexibility means cost efficiency, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, it does. So few maybe comments. I mean, when we speak from that angle, we need to understand that with the electrification ongoing, talking about the industry, talking about the buildings, district heating, as you mentioned, definitely we see that the load pattern changing, evolving, let's say. And it means that potentially each of the pattern, each of the load, is it a commercial building or industrial load, definitely require their own type of the way how to handle, and the best way to find the solution how each of the player would be able to adapt their demand. So that would definitely bring the biggest efficiency, the biggest value out of it, because the key point is to find the way how can we activate the demand side as much as possible.
Right. All right. We speak about, and Ignas, I was actually wanted to go to you. A comment from you.
Yeah, I really want to jump into this. I heard a very interesting suggestion. Why not, at the time when the electricity price is negative or zero, give a 50% discount for the tariff? How about 100% discount?
I was just conservative. I thought 100% would be too provocative to TSO, so I kind of moderated myself.
And with that, I would like to invite you to Lithuania, because Lithuania is actually planning to implement dynamic tariffs for the consumer side. And we will be having, on the transmission system level, fully dynamic tariffs, meaning that at the time of zero electricity, the tariffs will be zero.
Ignas, which hat do you have on now? TSO hat or renewables developer hat? Or both?
I think, just like a side note, one of the greatest strengths in Lithuania and why we're having the success that we're having, that we have a very good collaboration between main stakeholders, developers, system operators. Ministry's role is extremely important, gluing us all together. And I wouldn't put as a separate entities, as separate interest entities, but that is the way forward to actually find a common solution to enable developers, because that's how we reach success.
Well, I mean, there was one important word mentioned here in discussion: incentive. How do you incentivize? And I mean, looking at all those willing to invest and to develop projects, I mean, cumulatively, well, 9 gigawatts in Lithuania, up to 6 probably gigawatts in Latvia. I mean, there's plenty also in Estonia. We are going to need ability to export this. And Gatis already mentioned those. I mean, the Harmony link, which would allow more commercial flows of electricity with the continental Europe, because the Litpol link currently serves mostly for balancing purposes, really. And I just wonder how ready is the grid for rapid changes that the market demands or requires. I don't know which would be the more appropriate word. I know, Viktoriya, from the pan-European point of view, is the Baltic region, does it look good or not so good? I mean, Gatis says it's good.
Of course I will say it looks good. I mean, again, we need to think about the great thing that you achieved last year with the desynchronization. This was an excellent example of regional cooperation. And I think you should be, really congratulating yourself, first of all, of how you achieve it, but then build on that on the regional cooperation front going forward. Because if we talk about interconnecting systems, this will be the way forward that we need to go in all of Europe, not only in the Baltics. And I think one particular aspect here would be not only to think about interconnecting with other markets, but also building at some point also what do we do with potential offshore wind deployment in the Baltic region, which was also one of the points that we picked up in the previous panel. So definitely from that perspective, this type of interconnected projects would bring great value to the energy system of the entire European Union, and there is a lot that the Baltic states can do on that front.
Yes, as crazy as it may sound, all right, so we can assume that the grids are ready and will be ready because there is constantly maintenance going on, of course, and new developments are going on. So those interconnections that are in the pipeline were already mentioned today earlier. But then again, since this is a wind power conference predominantly, although it covers, of course, goes beyond that, because wind alone today is good, but it's not good enough, so you need hybrid solutions again. There's a question which comfortably fits into our discussion. Will the increase in wind energy bring new challenges to grid balancing? And this is, this question really fits our discussion. Hybrid solutions, plenty of wind projects look at Ignas, look at Lithuania, 28 wind farms in Lithuania currently. I didn't count really, didn't check how many in Estonia, but very few in Latvia comparatively. And so we can say that Latvia has a bright future. It has plenty of potential of developing wind energy. But all of this wind energy suddenly comes online. Is the grid ready? Who would like to comment? I don't know, maybe Deniss.
Yeah, I can comment, sure. So definitely what we see today is that wind energy is not anymore just a type of the alternative energy. So it's a key pillar of any of the Baltic country energy system. And it's part of our resilience, which is now more important than ever before. It's a part of our national security. Why so? Because it becomes, a question of the stability, which definitely might impact, the potential investors to come to invest, and potential confidence for the industrial users, and potential for the overall society. So, for sure. So that what we see, and we need to take the advantage of it, and we need to understand that Baltic countries already became a high renewable with the contribution of the wind type of the system market, for sure. And but nevertheless, we need to understand that in order to take the full advantage of it, we need to work on the other side. So we need to continue to work and to invest into the system readiness, in order to implement. So another key point is that to take any of the wind park project, is it onshore or even offshore, way more complex topic, like not as a separate project for the generation, but as the system approach. Meaning it should be like considered as part of the system approach, in together with the system, in together with the demand flexibility, with the storage and everything. So to consider as the full system approach, through the system approach.
Yeah, exactly. So systemic look at the development of the system, of course. This is why it's called a system. It's not like separate elements.
And back to your topic, and the panel what we discussed today, Latvia, as you mentioned, like Lithuania took the advantage of, of developing way faster. So Estonia also, and Latvia could definitely have the lessons learned. So meaning that you're able to definitely invest a lot of more into the designing of the whole system, including the flexibility from the really beginning. So, and to understand what kind of lessons been in Estonia and Lithuania.
Right. Okay, the time is merciless on us, unfortunately. So we have to start wrapping up. And one exercise that I have in mind for all of you, this will allow us to be just in time. Imagine if you were a decision maker who can make one important decision which can alleviate a problem that you have from your perspective, whether you represent a business or a TSO or a policy planner in this respect. I mean, what would that decision be today? I mean, what is... Dmitry, you want to...
I can start because we have a very distinct wish, but more grid data transparency. I would endorse our TSO. They have become way better in the last years, but still we would like to see more transparency on the capacities, both on consumption and generation side, and more, let's say, grid data available so that you can make better decisions.
And so a transparency platform is not good enough?
It's not that kind of transparency. I'm talking about more of a local
Okay, message heard. I don't know who wants to jump in next, whichever. Deniss. Gatis, go ahead.
Yeah. I think I would switch the facilitation and subsidies away from generation towards facilitating industrialization and demand side. And if industrialization and demand is developing, then I think the price signals will do their fair share towards generation.
And this is where also the incentives might come in, right? I mean, it will be a self-incentive, so to say. Okay, right, Deniss.
Yeah, I can share. For me, like one item is activate the demand. If we will be able to activate the demand potential, I mentioned it already several times, so definitely we'll be able how the different business models will continue to evolve, and it will definitely positively impact the whole evolution of the renewable development in the Baltic countries, for sure. So.
Oh, thank you. That's a good point. Ignas.
Yeah, actually, I would like just to add to what Gatis said. I'm a strong believer in price signals. So if I would have the power to make magic happen, the first focus of mine would probably be demand-side flexibility and enabling price signals to do their work.
Yeah, we are leaning heavily, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, heavily towards grid flexibility, okay, and the demand flexibility as well. Viktoriya.
I have on the top of my mind grid connection queues, because this is a very significant challenge for getting renewable energy projects to the grid right now. We have in Europe more than 300 gigawatts of wind energy projects that are stuck in the grid connection process. So that we need to fix ASAP, and we need to move from the first come, first serve rule that normally happens across Europe and try to prioritize projects that are really mature and can bring the vast value to the grid.
So, do you also are you hinting at harmonizing the rules and regulations Europe-wide, or shall it still remain national prerogative?
Certainly, but again, there could be an option where we think about how to harmonize at least the prioritization process at European level and see basically how to take out what we call the zombie projects that are maybe not mature enough to be connected but are clogging the process for everybody else. This is something that will be part of this reform that I was mentioning previously, the European Grid Power Package, so it's definitely a thing that will be discussed with the national governments, with the European Parliament, and with the European Commission.
Just additional question here. Yeah, what's the indicative time horizon for this? I mean, for these changes, or?
The Grid Power Package hopefully will be concluded by the end of this year, if all goes well. So now is the crunch time, and basically all of us need to mobilize ourselves to work on that.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I think we were actually even more efficient than I expected. So we still have 2 minutes, and I'll give a sentence or two from my own perspective. It looks like the flexibility is the keyword here today in the discussion. I'm not sure if all the stakeholders are ready for flexibility yet. Probably there are different stages of readiness for flexibility. I mean, auxiliary services definitely is a market yet untouched sufficiently by stakeholders. We have, for example, in Latvia, the law on aggregators in place for several years, and imagine how many aggregators are actively participating in the market. you can guess, it's close to zero. It's close to zero, so it's more than zero, but it's close to that, but it simply shows that there is huge potential into that. There are some smaller experiments going on by some of the stakeholders, some of the market participants. They are testing the system, whether it actually works on a smaller scale, so probably they'll scale up. So there are interesting times ahead for the system operators, most likely for DSOs first and for the TSOs as well. On the business side, on the developers side, so you will be expecting decisions to be adopted that would provide clear signals to the market that flexibility is there and seasonality should be considered and more diversity in the products that are available. Okay, I don't know. Anyone want to say one last sentence, one last message to the audience? Actually, I do have a question. I do have a message. When listening to the morning part of this discussion today, I had just one conclusion, really. There's only one key question. Do we need it and do we want it? If we want it, we make decisions. We have steps, clear steps that we have to take. We have to make decisions. It's either we want it or we don't want it. You can't be in between forever. And I have a feeling that the industry has been hibernating in this in-between situation for too long already, and this has disincentivized, to a certain extent, also investment into the development of wind energy, at least in Latvia, not so much in Lithuania and Estonia, but there's definitely space for development. On this optimistic note and encouragement, I would like to thank my panelists,